you.
And glad to hear that some of the comments that you have mentioned. Just want to throw in there.
I have a question on that, if I could.
Sure.
For follow-up.
Yes.
So I just have a question. They have submitted some information on the preconditions. I'm just curious what you would like to see in order to have that stipulation removed, because they had submitted something. So I just wanted to make sure we were clear as staff. And
that's a good point. As we did with some earlier this morning, we had looked and asked for some specific information regarding stipulations. What are the information that you would like to see? So we had already voted on the motion itself. Can we just add this as an addendum?
Or just add it as direction. So
okay, as direction sounds good. Right. May I hear some thoughts or wording that you'd like to see? Member Tchaikovsky?
Well, given this preconditions issue that we just discussed, I think I'd kind of be really interested, especially given your wide reach and the geographic range of your district and the high likelihood that there could be some high turnover of teachers in your area. I'd be interested in seeing some numbers of hire dates. I'd like to know hire dates by teachers that you serve, by district, and then date of enrollment or active participation in induction. That's what I would be interested in.
Okay, that's helpful.
Okay, so did I hear three things that you had mentioned there? Right, one we heard hire dates by district, date of enrollment. Was there a third? I'm not sure I heard that correctly.
Induction. I think that's probably it. I mean, if we could sort it, right, we'd want to be able to get the hire date, but also be able to sort that by district. And then we could, that would be also useful to you, I think, because you might find out which districts tend to hire more people during certain times of the year. Certainly seasonal employment where you are would be a factor, I think.
And that's probably good follow-up to what they had submitted in their precondition response, because they are asking for the list of all new hires. So, okay, great. That's very helpful. I just wanted to close that loop so we knew what you were looking for on that.
Great.
And of
and
course,
just
Bob
to be clear then, sorry to interrupt, but just to be clear then, some of these data might be off your radar though. That's the thing, right? I mean, so I'd like to know, for example, let's say there was one of these unnamed partners who perceives induction to be a burden, hypothetically, right? I would want to know how many teachers that district hired. So that might require collecting that hiring information from the district. This is, this would really be instructive to us in our process of continual improvement, right? So that we learn as a group here how to effectively support teachers within their first year instead of waiting until they somehow become enrolled in an induction program.
Member Creasy had a comment now. I'll start before.
So along those lines, though, I'm just thinking about how practical and the difficulty of getting that information, because it might be some type of a issue where you're going to have to know their social security numbers in order to know that they've been hired and so on and so forth. You know what I mean? So I would just think about that for a minute. There might be a way or some type of collaboration with the district and their HR department. Maybe that's some help, but there are considerations in terms of protecting that information.
That was more or less what I was going to ask about, was the ability to match like the actual individual without, identifying information, but to know when they were hired and when they accessed induction, because that's really what kind of the missing variable, but it might not be easy to get.
So you could get that obviously from your people who are enrolled, right? Because you have both sets of data for that group of people, but it's the other invisible group that isn't being served that I'm concerned about. So I don't know if we could enlist some help from consultants with that or something, because there are these people throughout our state, and our program's not functioning. The standards aren't serving people as effectively as they could if they don't have access to the programs that they're supposed to have. So thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
I think so. I think that gives us some direction. And we may want to think about a variety of ways that might get you that information. And we're happy to work. And Bob, of course, is retiring, so he won't be working on this, but we will make sure that you are well supported, Kern.
Well, and just to our guests who are, probably like going, oh my God, this like sounds giant. I just have to say thank you for humoring us and listening and recognizing that what you're allowing us to consider and explore has implications for every other school district and induction program in our state. So thanks a lot for your help.
Yeah, thank you. And it gets back to the point that you mentioned earlier. I believe it was Ms. Brown, as far as finding the process collaborative, supportive, and positive. And so within the same vein, we hope you recognize that our comments here and suggestions are offered with the same intent. So thank you so much.
Thank you. We're already puzzling. I can tell Celia's brain's clicking and so is mine. So we'll start working on it.
All right, awesome. Sounds good. Look forward to it. Thank you. All right, item 19. Item 19 is report of the accreditation team to Fresno State University. Consultant Poonam Betty and Administrator Cheryl Hickey will introduce this item. Joining them is team lead Karon Melblom Nishioka and institutional representatives Juliet Waldleitner, Assistant Director of Teacher Education, Randy Yerrick, Dean of the Kremen School of Education and Human Development, and Janelle Pitt Parker. I have to notice is tentative. Is Janelle Pitt Parker with us? Associate Dean of the Kremen School of Education and Human Development. Anyone need to recuse themselves? All right, seeing none. Ms. Betty, will you please begin?
I think I'm starting. Sorry about that. So good afternoon. Item 19 presents the Accreditation Site Visit Team Report for CSU Fresno or Fresno State. They're known as both. The site visit occurred virtually this year, just this month, April 3rd through April 6th, or just last month. So the turnaround time for the finalization of this report was really extraordinary, and I have to thank everybody for chipping in on that. We want to thank the institution for hosting the site visit. A special thanks to Dr. Juliet Waldleitner, I can never pronounce your name, I'm sorry, for always being available at any time to address every question, provide documents or interview requests that the team has had. She was truly amazing. Coordinating a site visit for an institution that had a number of programs that Fresno State has can be intense. And given the fact that this site visit was also a concurrent visit, the first ever with the national accrediting body EQUIP, the Association for Advancing Quality in Educator Preparation, really meant she had a lot on her plate in terms of logistics of this visit, and it was very, very complex. So Juliet handled this all quite well, and the rest of the faculty and staff at Fresno State. We are grateful to her, to Dean Yerrick, and to Associate Dean Janelle Pitt Parker, and to all of the faculty and staff at Fresno State. That made this large and complex visit go smoothly. The visit was not only complex for the size, but for other reasons. There were a lot of transitions to new standards for some of the programs, transitions of lots of personnel at Fresno State, including a new dean, and several programs where the visit included both outgoing as well as the incoming program coordinators. Lots of pathways within the programs. As I said before, this was the first EQUIP visit in California, and unlike CAPE, which we've done before, this was a concurrent visit, not a joint visit, which meant that we were sharing interview space with the EQUIP team, and really we didn't have to coordinate on the production of the reports or findings, but we were talking a lot. We were making sure that they were asking questions and we weren't duplicating questions, those kinds of things. So EQUIP was really cooperative leading up to the visit, and we learned a lot about what we would do differently next time. So we are actually having another conversation coming up so that we can coordinate and think about how we can improve the process. But perhaps the most difficult was that EQUIP reviewers spanned many different time zones. And so that made it really impossible to meet with them during the visit. So, but we did what we could. I just want to say that I know CSU has these kind of competitive nature with one another. And so San Francisco State this morning was talking about 617 interviews. So we see there's 617 and raise it to 659 in this visit. Our team did extraordinary work with lots and lots of interviews. So I'll turn this over to Poonam, who I truly could not have done this without her. She's amazing and was really, really helpful on every account. So Poonam.
Thanks so much, Cheryl. I just want to take a moment to thank the 13-member site visit team for being a part of this site visit. And as you can imagine, coordinating with all the team members' respective schedules was not always easy, but we are grateful for their time and for their openness in conducting concurrent interviews with their AQUIP counterparts during the site visit. And we are also grateful for our team lead, Karen Melblom-Nishioka, for setting clear expectations of the team and for supporting every single one of our team members, including our newer team members. She made sure that every team member's voice was heard, and she worked persistently to ensure that the report reflected the team's findings against the respective standards. So, and I do want to give a quick thank you to Cheryl as well. It's always a pleasure working with you on these site visits. So, but just being able to organize everything and coordinate all that was done in preparation for the site visit, I am grateful to have been able to work with you through this. So thank you so much for that. And with that, we're going to turn this over to Karen so that she can walk through the team's findings.
Great. And thank you for your kind words. Team would like to thank Fresno State for their work in addressing the challenges of developing the documents for the visit and arranging the visit meetings in virtual spaces. We want to acknowledge the difficulties associated with doing this and appreciate all that you did to make the team's work manageable. We also appreciate the speed with which requests for additional information was handled. And finally, we are so thankful for the incredible assistance we received from Cheryl Hickey and Poonam Betty as our CTC liaisons extraordinaire. We could not have done this work without their careful and diligent guidance. And I must say, the work that the CTC liaisons do is monumental. When I returned to California in 1995, there must have been at least double the number of admin and staff in the CTC offices that there are now. But there hasn't been any reduction in responsiveness that I've encountered. And this is because of the incredible work that the liaisons and the staff at CTC do and their commitment to the work. They work 7 days a week. When we were all furloughed as state employees, they worked every day. It's not at all unusual to receive a response to a query on a Sunday or after 10 o'clock at night. And I really don't know how they manage to continue to maintain the pace that they do. So I can't say thank you enough. With that said, upon review of the documents provided and the interviews conducted during the visit, and in some cases the weeks prior, the team found the following: preliminary multiple subjects, single subject with intern, all standards were met. Preliminary education specialist, mild moderate with intern, all standards again met. Preliminary education specialist, moderate severe, with intern, all standards met. Preliminary administrative services credential, again, all services met. Pupil personnel services, PPS, school psych with intern, again, all standards met. PPS, pupil services personnel, school counseling, again, met. School social work, child welfare and attendance, all standards met. School nurse services, all standards met. Agricultural specialist, again, all standards met. Speech language pathology, all standards met. Preliminary education specialist, deaf and hard of hearing, of the 27 standards, 19 were met, 2 were met with concerns, 6 were not met. In particular, the issues identified by the team are very specific and unique to this really important and much needed program. It's important to note that there are currently only 5 DHH teachers of the deaf programs in our state, 26 in the nation. And this is a significant reduction over the last decade. So this program is uniquely important. Reportedly, this program does a good job of preparing candidates to work with deaf school-age students, but the standards call for a program that serves both deaf and the hard of hearing community from birth through high school. In that respect, the team found a lack of evidence around issues serving the hard of hearing community, such as those related to hearing aid technologies, cochlear implants, and other kinds of technological advances that are useful for members of this population if they choose. Additionally, little instructional information was found regarding content related to educating the birth to 3-year-old population. Reading and literacy and reading literacy leadership specialists, of the 10 standards, 4 were met with concerns. Common standards. Standard 1 was met with concerns. The team met with a highly dedicated faculty and staff who are committed to the work of Kremen. However, one-person departments and resources appear to be taxing the ability of faculty, staff, and administrators to accomplish the tasks as they desire to do. The team learned of issues related to mentor training, advising, and program operations that caused concern. Standard 2, Common Standard 2 met. Common Standard 3 met. Common Standard 4 was met with concerns. While a system is in place to generate data regarding program effectiveness, student and employer perceptions of graduates, it is not yet clear how these data are being used. The team is encouraged by the planning and development of an evaluation system, but the use of the data appears to be emerging. The team looks forward to evidence of implementation and full use of the data systems developed in the decision-making processes going forward. Standard 5 was met. So on the basis of these findings, the team recommends accreditation with stipulation. The following are the stipulations recommended by the team: that within 1 year, the institution provide evidence demonstrating that it has addressed the issues identified by the site visit team as it relates to the following standards that were determined to be less than fully met. Common Standard 1 relating to resource issues that impact advising and workload. For Common Standard 4, demonstrating that it has fully implemented its framework for unit-wide continuous improvement program. Related to the preliminary ed specialist deaf and hard of hearing credential specialty program area, standards 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, and 11 need to be enhanced based on the suggestions in the report. And reading literacy added authorization, reading literacy specialist, credential program standards 1, 6, 9, and 10 also related to the report need to be strengthened. So again, thank you very much for all of your hard work and putting up with us, and the quick turnaround for data and information and reading and reviewing and such. I appreciated working with all of you. Thank you.
Great, thank you for the thorough report. And I'd like to call the committee's attention to the report on page 4 and top of page 5, which then has all those stipulations listed there with great detail. So we'll consider that as we move through the process here. We now want to invite the institutional representatives to briefly comment about the visit. We remind you it's not time to dispute the team's report, but rather provide any thoughts that you may have about the visit itself.
I'm Randy Yerrick. I'm the Dean of Kremen. As noted before, I'm joined by Dr. Janelle Pitt-Parker, who's my Associate Dean, and Assistant Director of Teacher Education, Juliet Wellneitner. We want to thank the Commission for, well, not just the Commission, but the review team, the visiting team, and all those who were with us and who helped us in the reports, including Cheryl and Karen and Poonam prior to the visit. They were all flexible, very open and honest and prompt, and just great partners through the whole process. I want to say thank you for the opportunity to kind of allow us to respond and correct factual errors in the report. That was a quick turnaround, but we were able to do that. And Dr. Wellneitner sent it out to all of the chairs and the program coordinators as soon as we received it and turned it around. And your team was amazing at being able to do it in such a short period of time, knowing that this meeting was coming up. So thank you for their thoroughness and their expediency in the review as well. And I guess it kind of seems odd to thank people for their assessment and critique of our work, but it's important because this is where we know that we can improve, right? We can only get better when we completely understand where we start. So we want to thank everyone for that part of the process. And though it's only been a couple of weeks, we've already started responding to the things that were just mentioned in both the deaf and hard of hearing as well as the reading specialist in the two areas of both institutional support and continuous improvement. I want to let you know, I want to let the commission know that the provost and the president were both present at the final report. They've been provided with the corrected report as well. And they've already understood the several areas of need that we have. The provost and president immediately after the meeting scheduled another meeting with just us. And then I have had 2 meetings since with both of them as well. And I will tell you that that they were both pleased, but also very sensitive and responsive to what were identified as areas of improvement, and had promised at the time and continue to promise and extend to us a commitment to fulfilling resources that are required to make the improvements that have been noted in the program or in the report. They asked for an immediate list of resources last week. And I told them that what we were doing is in the process of meeting with both of these programs and providing a more complete plan. It's one thing to be able to respond and say, okay, we're going to have these hires, we're going to make these changes, but we wanted to have a more comprehensive and thoughtful plan, because many of the programs that we credential are actually found outside of our school, one being, of course, school nursing, another being DHA. There's a number of them that reside outside. And so we're working with both the chairs outside of our Kremen School of Education, as well as the deans. And so we've met twice with the deaf and hard of hearing, and we've had many hours actually discussing how and why these things have been not present, those things that were responsive, for example, to the hard of hearing community. The note of cochlear implants and the birth to 3 year training. Those are all things that we know that we can attend to. And the report said that we actually had expertise on campus that we weren't tapping into. That was brought up to the department as well as the program coordinator. So we've been made aware that there are responses that we can attend to with existing resources, but we want to include to the provost and the president a very clear plan for how we're going to leverage what we have going on, but as well as what they need to offer. So it'll be another couple of weeks. I would imagine the first week of June, the president and provost will receive a proposal in both of these areas for resources that they'll support. But I want to tell the commission right now that the president and provost, since my arrival 18 months ago, have been extremely supportive and very generous and men of integrity. They are leaders of integrity that when they say we will support things, they have. They provided resources since my arrival in every program that we've asked for both this accreditation as well as KCREP, and they can be counted on for providing these resources moving forward. With regard to the reading specialist, we also have had meetings we've discussed with program coordinators and the chair, and we're kind of using this as a catalyst, a kind of an opportunity to revisit the structure and opportunities and options and resources that are within the program, but really thinking about re-envisioning the program as it moves forward. So with that, I will tell you that we've begun our continuous improvement efforts when I arrived, and we decided we were moving forward with AQEP. AQEP is all about continuous improvement. So we were providing meeting spaces and data and evaluation for things we needed to improve. And we plan on continuing down that path, and we anticipate being done with all of what you've asked us to do within 6 months, not a year. And again, I want to thank everybody for all of their efforts. It's been a great team.
Thank you, Mr. Yerk, for the detailed report. Appreciate that. Also nice to find out that you already have the president and provost support. That's essential in a situation like this, always. All right, this is an opportunity for us as committee members to offer any comments or questions you may have. Member Hillis.
I just had a quick question. Being one of the universities with another DHH program, I know that some of these issues extend extend pretty deeply into philosophies and positions about DHH communities. And so I'm curious how that is actually getting borne out in your discussions about how to address some of the concerns.
That is a great question. What I have is as if you know Dr. Warshaw, she's a third generation deaf person raised in a deaf family. She comes from a specific orientation of how it is that she's been operating the program, but it was made clear in the meetings that we had with her and with her department chair that the commission, and I want to remind you that I was in California teaching from 99 until 2007 and involved in this in the CTC process. And since that time and have returned in that 16 or 17 years, the commission has moved forward. And as the commission moves forward in all these teacher ed areas, including deaf and hard of hearing, I will tell you that the movement of the commission was not necessarily reflected in the movements of Kremen moving forward. And what I mean by that is that there was a reliance upon old existing paradigms for meeting needs and old existing processes, and an under attention, a lack of attention, if you will, to the need for the program to grow. And it was basically a singular individual running all of it by themselves without support for making improvements and expanding. There's been lots of discussion since that meeting, attention to what needs to happen within the program, and making sure that we're not just meeting one ideological stance, but the expectations of the commission to be certified, to be accredited.
Thank you, Member Forbes.
Well, I'll kind of follow up on that because it just struck me that of the 5 or 6 DHH programs in the state, there are 2 program sponsors sitting here at the table along with you. And so I'm really also quite aware of the challenges of meeting the age span of the service area of the credentials. Birth to 22 is quite a large age span. But regarding especially the ideological kinds of shifts, we're just about to enter into some new standards as well that are going to be yet again a different ideological shift from the current standards. And so with the number of current standards that you're going to be working on, I'm just curious, that's going to be it'll be an interesting challenge to be simultaneously implementing new standards that are rather different from the current standards and fixing the current standards. So, and I say this because we just had our accreditation site visit as well. We're on next month. So what kind of capacity do you foresee that you're going to, it's great to hear that the president and the provost are on board, because that's really a pretty tall order.
It's definitely going to be a challenge.
About that?
We have no question that this is going to be a challenge, but I believe that we're up to the challenge, and the challenge is only going to be met with additional personnel, with people who are both well steeped in literature as well as well immersed in practices and in the deaf community. We're going to make no apologies to the president and the provost about the amount of resources that it's going to take to do this, which is going to be not just individuals, but planning time and collaborative time. We're anticipating, Juliet and I are also, and Janelle are also planning on adding to not just our existing Office of Clinical Practice for coordination, but also people who are coordinating outside, which has not existed before. We have had these individual programs which have been reporting to us without any responsibility for understanding how the whole picture works. And in isolation, it's really hard to accomplish things like that. But we've established a culture of being able to collaborate and to inform. And when we find that we have these obstacles, to reach out directly to the provost, and they've been responsive within months, right? Within sometimes weeks for what it is we need to move forward. So both personnel, collaborative time, planning time, and constant communication with the CTC as well is going to be required. We know that.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that that is now in the record because I can really see that it's going to be a tall order. And I do believe you're up to it too, from what I've been reading in the report and listening to today. So there was one other area that I'd kind of like to highlight, and that is your bilingual authorization program. And kudos for mounting the Hmong bilingual authorization program in particular. And so I did notice that, for example, the candidates in that program have an opportunity to do field work in Hmong dual language classrooms or bilingual classrooms. And because the standards are also changing for bilingual authorization and 20 hours of field work is now going to be required, do you have any thoughts about how you were able to get that those kind of partnerships established? I don't know how many Hmong bilingual classrooms are out there, but it must have been a challenge to find these fieldwork placements, I'm guessing.
Well, I will tell you that Fresno is a very, very diverse place to work. I come from 5 other institutions. This is the place where I will retire because it's such an enriching place to work. I will tell you that just one of our high schools, or one of our high school districts that we work with, has over 450 students in Hmong cultural programs who meet after school for Hmong education. We have here on our campus the person that was responsible for originally documenting the Hmong language for the culture. So we have a lot, and we've just completed a new hiring process for a Hmong faculty here whose sole dedication is the BAP program and bringing up those courses, who has been here in service, but now we are the ones who basically are the ones who are operating that program with her involved. The point is this, that we have things in our community that other people don't. And so we're going to use what we have as a way to leverage and to set examples for how other people may think about not just Hmong, not just bilingual Spanish, but other languages that also need support. We just happen to have with us a rich Hmong cultural heritage that is supported by lots of K-12 resources and a very close community. Is that helpful?
Yes, it's very helpful. And again, I'm glad that that's in the record, because I think all of us in program sponsors, especially of less commonly taught languages, want to be thinking broadly about community partnerships where we can find opportunities for our candidates to do field work. And so these are really helpful examples that you're providing. I look forward to hearing more about that as time rolls on.
Thank you. Member Tchaikovsky.
Right. Congratulations and hello. I also wanted to add a comment similar to my colleagues right there. I noticed that you're moving toward a cohort model that seems to have been born from residency for your bilingual candidates. And so as many people have already said, you offer such incredibly important programs from DHH to the bilingual programs in various languages. And so I'm interested in how that programmatic commitment to putting those students into cohorts, which could allow for methods instruction in a target language, which would otherwise be impossible, like how that further strengthens this really critical group of California educators. So that's cool. I'm looking forward, like Cheryl said, to seeing what that looks like.
Thank you. Any further discussion or questions at all from committee members? All right, this is an action item. I call you back again to page 4 of the report. So we just be certain before we ask for a motion what it is that we are looking for based upon the team's report. So with that in mind, is there a motion? Member Taylor.
I move that we accept the recommendation for CSU Fresno accreditation with stipulations as outlined in the report.
All right, thank you. Is there a second? Second from Member Morrison. Cheryl, does that provide enough information at that point? Okay, thank you. So call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries. So thank you for your time and your efforts, Mr. Yerrick. Ms. Wallite. Hang on, Wall-Leitner. I got this. Let's see, Ms. Pitt Parker, Ms. Mebelom Nishioka, and Ms. Hickey, and also Ms. Betty. I think I got you all. All right, thank you all for joining us. We appreciate your time. Thank you. We do have, moving on to item 20, we're a little bit behind. I appreciate the patience of those who are participating in the next item 20. It's the report of the Accreditation Revisit Team to Bay Area School of Enterprise, the REACH Institute, Consultant Bob Locks will introduce this item, and joining him is Team Lead Bob Perry, Institutional Representatives Dr. Joe Ross from Reach University President, and Liz Baham Provost. Would you correct my pronunciation, please?
You are spot on. You are spot on.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, great. Thank you. Welcome. Anyone need to recuse himself? All right, seeing none. Mr. Locks, could you please begin?
Okay, thank you. The revisit for Bay Area School of Enterprise, or REACH, was held March 9th and 10th, 2022. REACH had 8 stipulations that needed to be addressed from their February 2021 site visit. They also took the opportunity to work on all the standards that were not fully met, to either modify their program or to better explain how these standards were being met. All interviews were conducted virtually, and along with the documentation that REACH had provided previous to the site visit, the team felt we had an accurate portrayal of how REACH addressed their stipulations. Team lead Bob Perry will now share our findings.
Mr. Perry, are you with us?
I am.
Great, the floor is yours.
I am. Sorry. When we switched over and came in as a panelist, funny things happened to my screen. It's great to be with you all this afternoon. Thank you so much. We really appreciated the opportunity to hold the revisit. Working with the team at the institution was always a pleasure. I'd like to just direct your attention to I believe it's page 4 of the report. I'm just going to run through the stipulations and summarize them. I'm not going to read them all aloud because through our interviews, as Bob said, we were able to confirm that and recommend that all the stipulations be removed. So the first one has to do with stakeholders' involvement in decision making. And we interviewed faculty, instructional personnel, and relevant stakeholders and recommend to the committee today that that stipulation be removed. The second one has to do with collaboration with P12 colleagues, and we interviewed P12 colleagues and also faculty members. We also interviewed candidates and confirmed that we can recommend that this stipulation be removed. The third stipulation has to do with qualification of faculty and supervisors. And in our interviews and reviewing extensive documentation provided by the institution, we recommend that that stipulation be removed as well. The next stipulation has to do with guidance for candidates. We reviewed excellent documentation provided by the institution, as well as interviewed candidates and staff to make sure that the process flowed smoothly, make sure that the candidates understood the process and were able to walk through that. We recommend that stipulation be removed. The next one has to do with site-based credential supervisors. And we discussed with the institution the process in interviews. We discussed with site-based people what that process was, triangulated that, and reviewed paper documentation virtually, and recommend that stipulation be removed as well. The next one is with continuous improvement, which is an area that institutions many times struggle with. We talked with the stakeholders involved and feel like not only are meetings being held, but that listening and implementation of those suggestions, that is happening as well. So that's an important one. In our interviews, we had people tell us that we are very happy to make recommendations because we know that they're being acted upon. We recommend that stipulation be removed as well. And then stipulation 7 also has to do with continuous improvement. And we recommend that that one be removed for the reasons just mentioned. And then the last one, provide evidence that documents that documents the process to which it ensures that all candidates know and demonstrate knowledge and skills required by the standards prior to recommendation for a credential. This is basically a process issue. We interviewed the people involved and looked at documentation, reviewed the processes, and we recommend that that stipulation be removed as well. I would like to personally thank the institution for their responsiveness. Many emails back and forth, always responsive, always wanting to work with us, understand exactly what needed to be done, and to carry that forward from the top levels of the leadership to faculty and also with candidates. So with that, I will turn it back over. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Perry. There's no opportunity for the institutional representatives to briefly comment about the visit. We remind you it's not a time to dispute the team's report, but rather provide any thoughts that you may have about the visit itself.
I'll start, and I have to commence by thanking Bob Perry and also the representative from the CTC to us, Bob Liu, who we refer to as CTC Bob. We refer to Bob as LA Bob. We are appreciative of having gone through this process, although I will tell you it was a lot of work, but that work caused us to engage a lot of cross-organizational improvement efforts, and it caused us to engage with our partners very deeply. And at the end of it, although it was hard to go through it, we're very grateful for what we learned and what we were able to achieve, and appreciate the support of the CTC and the team in enabling us to do that. The nature of REACH is unusual, and so we appreciate the effort that was required for this, because REACH is a fully job-embedded, apprenticeship-based institution. And as we noted with you the last time we were before you, at least 2/3 of our candidate population and 70% of our teacher intern program and 72% of our leadership programs identify as Black, Indigenous, or people of color. And we're pleased with that, but we're engaged in continuous improvement efforts to continue that trend line and to deepen our efforts to address the teacher shortage. As part of that, in addition to having CTC accreditation for these programs, we have earned WASC accreditation for a fully apprenticeship-based bachelor's degree for paraprofessionals and employees working in schools. And we mention this because in setting up a registered apprenticeship for paraprofessionals, we are building the pipeline for our CTC program, particularly our intern program. And we believe that registered apprenticeship programs are a way for institutions, not just REACH, but others in California, to address the teacher shortage and tap an untapped source of incredible talent. The people working in schools, paraprofessionals, teaching aides, classroom aides, and others who, if they had a bachelor's degree, become eligible to enter into our CTC programs and other CTC programs. So we're grateful for the site visit because we think there's a lot of promise for what we're doing, and we are deeply committed to continuous improvement and not slowing down at all, and attending to the data and making sure that we identify areas where we can continue to do better by our candidate and our school partners and the increasing number of underserved counties that we're now working with your support.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. Ms. Baham, will you say anything? Offer any comments at all?
The only thing I'll say is that I think REACH prides itself on being a very transparent organization. And so the first visit, they saw the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it was a moment in time when we were in transition, not a matter of capacity, but of really timing to get everything back on track. Again, as Joe said, we appreciate the engagement with CTC Bob and LA Bob. And we appreciate being pushed. to a certain extent, right? Being pushed to see maybe what we don't see, and having that outside perspective. So we just really want to share that this has been difficult, and we're all the better for it. So we appreciate the engagement.
Great. Thank you for the comments. Any questions or comments from committee members? Member Tchaikovsky.
Yeah, congratulations here. I just had a question about stipulations 6 and 7 on page 12. There's a paragraph there that describes the way those are evidenced right now. So I'm just wondering if either or both of you would mind just help me understand better what you mean by a common thread. What do you mean by that? And what kind of data are you looking at to determine effectiveness? Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Could you say which page that's on?
I'm looking at page 12, like right in the middle of that page where it has revisit evidence. I'm just wondering a little bit about specifics about what exactly informed those conclusions there.
So is this directed at the team lead then maybe? Or either one.
Program
We could start by
representative.
talking, if I could clarify, are you asking about the continuous improvement process and the evidence pertaining to that?
Right. Just some specifics about what those data look like and how they're related to the claim of effectiveness. That's what I'm interested in. Like, how do you define that?
So we do have I think what was new for us prior to, well, after the first visit was that we have a fully functioning institutional research department. And we've since engaged in a very measured process of continuous improvement that includes measuring, modeling, focusing on the data that we're extracting, planning, and executing. And so everybody within the whole institution organization has engaged in that process. We've engaged it in ways that have been very apparent to not those of us that work internally, but to our candidates, our coaches, our advisory board. And I think we've always engaged in a process of continuous improvement. And it's not always been something that we have engaged our constituents around. And so I think in terms of having conversations, and Bob would need to speak to this, but in terms of having conversations, the folks that they spoke to had a different level of conversation to engage with because we had been more fluid in our conversation with them in the data gathering, the evidence, and helping and having them engage with us in terms of all of those steps with the continuous improvement process.
I would add that the institutional research team has some extraordinarily robust data collection tools now. We are doing constituent satisfaction surveys, something called a Net Promoter Score survey of candidates, faculty, school partners, and it's very illuminating when you see disconnects between expectations. Some of the data that we get, for example, leads us to surface for example, expectations that an intern program candidate may have around what it takes to prepare a lesson plan for their job as opposed to preparing a lesson plan for their preparation program. And it's supposed to be the same thing because we're job embedded. And so we get data back in terms of the qualitative comments as well as just the numerical surveys, and we can use that as part of the process. In addition, outcomes data that matters to us of course includes assessments on the CalPK and things as well, like that. But we learned a lot from our school partners because everybody's already working in a school full time. And so the assessments of principals and school leaders about the efficacy of the educators that are in our programs is very, very important to us because they have eyes on classrooms directly.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate your explicit articulation of what you're doing as related to how it's going to be used, right? Awesome. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other further questions or comments from committee members? All right, seeing none, this is an action item. Is there a motion? Member Forbes.
I move we accept the recommendation to remove the stipulations and change the finding to accreditation for the Bay Area School of Enterprise.
Okay, so moved. Is there a second? Second by Member Taylor. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries. Congratulations. Thank you, Dr. Ross. Thank you, Ms. Maham. And from COA, Bob, thank you, Bob Perry, and thank you, Bob Locks. And we do want to acknowledge again, Bob Locks, for your years of work with the CTC. My work with you began, yeah. And he's every time he's presented, and many of you have seen it as well, it's always been a calm force, just very logical, very detailed oriented, but also a sense of compassion for doing what's good for the institution, for the process. So thank you so much. I wish you all the best in your time in Missouri. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Right? Absolutely. That's right. See, except Bob, now you can't say, good to see you, I'm going home to the kids, the grandkids. You'll be there, right? You can't go away. Thanks again, Bob. All right, we are on to item 21. Item 21 is the discussion of the first quarterly report from Sacramento City Unified School District. Consultant Poonam Betty will introduce this item. And joining her are institutional representatives Kelly Dunkley, the induction coordinator, and Aaron Hansen, Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction. Does anyone need to recuse himself? All right, seeing none, Ms. Betty, will you please begin?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, committee members. Good to see you all again. So item 21 presents Sacramento City Unified School District's first quarterly report. Sac City Unified operates a teacher induction program. They hosted a site visit last October, and then the accreditation site visit report was presented to the COA at its February meeting earlier this year. At that meeting, the COA took action to set their accreditation status to be accreditation with major stipulations. One of the stipulations requires Sac City to provide quarterly reports, and this item presents the first of these reports. A link to Sac City's first quarterly report can be found on their quarterly reports webpage, and that link is provided at the top of page 1 of this item. And then a link to the site visit team's accreditation report, as again was presented this past February, is also linked on the first page of that item. And then across pages 1 to 2, you'll see listed the 9 stipulations that Sac City is required to address through these quarterly reports. And you may recall that the accreditation team noted some concerns, and I'm just going to list them off. These concerns were related to how the program was found to be operating within a silo within the district, the need for the district to provide sufficient resources for the program, the need for the regular assessment of the mentors in the program, the need for candidates to show growth across the CSTP, and also, again, at the district level, the need for a continuous improvement process. And since this is the first quarterly report, much of the information you'll see is kind of focused on the plans that are going to be put in place or that are beginning to be implemented to address the stipulations. So any actions that have been taken since February have been included within the report. And I would actually now like to turn this part of the presentation over to Kelly and Aaron just to briefly kind of comment on the report and point out maybe some top 3 highlights in the report.
Hello, excuse me. Good afternoon, everyone. First, I want to apologize for being in my car right now. My high school daughter qualified for sections on her swim team. And so we are in Lodi and I've been at a swim meet all day. I really apologize. I know it's not the most professional place to present to you from, but I needed to wear both hats today. So thank you for your understanding and patience with that. First of all, I just want to say thank you for this opportunity to share our progress since our last presentation in February. As I'm sure you're aware, Sac City experienced a strike in March and our students lost 8 days of instructional time. And in our department, that has greatly impacted our forward progress on a number of programs and our long-term planning. But I am pleased to share that thanks to our induction coordinator, Kelly Dunkley, we have been able to stay the course for the most part on our initial planning to address the stipulations to our accreditation. So as Poonam shared, I will highlight a few items for you that we have addressed since our time when we were here with you in February. First of all, to address the preconditions and to ensure that we are closing any remaining gaps in our systemic process, Kelly has continued to work with our human resources and tech services teams to fully and consistently address those preconditions by way of a digitized business process to identify and connect with new teachers. Second, I will say another highlight is that we are really focusing our efforts right now on our advisory committee work and our data collection in order to be able to do a full needs assessment so that we can align our induction program based on the needs of our teachers and of our mentors, along with the CTC standards and our Sac City instructional framework and strategic plan. So we held an advisory committee meeting that was delayed due to staffing shortages and the strike, but we did hold that last month and shared the outcomes of the accreditation with them and engaged them in some problem solving around the stipulations and gathered their feedback for long-term planning. And we have another meeting scheduled in June. We are working to conduct more consistent outreach to targeted individuals and positions that we would like to have engaging in our advisory committee. So that, ranges from our central office staff to our district leaders, our educational partners and outside organizations, our site leaders, and our teachers. So we're working to establish a more regular, consistent group to engage in that work, to, as was referred to in our initial accreditation report, to really focus on that de-siloing effort. I will say that our steps that we are looking at with that advisory committee meeting in June is to compile and share our participating teacher and support provider survey data, and then work to establish our vision and collaborate on developing a strategic plan that's aligned with our vision, our accreditation stipulations, especially with regards to specific goals and data collection to better analyze our progress and the effectiveness of our program, both with how prepared our teachers are to enter in professional practice and the effectiveness of our mentors. So that's all in the works, and we're looking forward to that June meeting when we're able to really dig in and engage with all of that. The third highlight and final highlight that I will share, and we did share this previously, that through the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant, we created a new Educator and Leadership Development Director level position who will oversee the alignment of our induction plan with other new teacher and admin pipelines and professional development projects across the district. We are in the final steps of getting that position posted. It has been approved, it has been funded, all of those things. So now we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's in order to be able to post that position with an anticipated start date, hopefully of July 1st. And that's all. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great, thanks for the details. Any comments or questions from committee members? Member Tchaikovsky.
Well, thanks for all that specificity on next steps. And I just wanted to call out one thing I saw on page 4, which is this assignment record document you've got hyperlinked right there under stipulation number 4. I think what that illustrates to me is your commitment to provide support to candidates whenever they come into your district, which is hugely important. And I see you acknowledging that sometimes this can be a little tricky, but what you have on this document here shows quarterly that you will figure out who needs support. You will adapt your program requirements to meet the needs of those candidates, and it's all ILP based. So that looks like it's moving in the right direction to me. I like that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further questions or comments from committee members? Okay, looking through the report, we see that the next quarterly report coming up, and we want to be certain that as we go through this, that we have provided enough information for staff on which to proceed, and also that we feel that within the recommendation that there's enough information to feel that the things are moving forward. Okay, having said that, want to be certain that we're all in agreement on the same page on that. Let's take a look at any recommend or any motion. Anybody want to throw out a motion? Member Tchaikovsky.
Well, I move that we accept the first quarterly report from Sacramento City.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Member Hillis. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. And again, we appreciate you all for joining us. Family first. We hope she does well.
I want to know what event she's swimming. What's it? Short axis, long axis?
So she today has swum. She was in the 400 medley relay, the 50 free, the 100 free, and next up, which I'm going to run out and I think we'll be catching, is the 400 free relay. So today's preliminaries and Saturday are finals. So
Oh my
fingers
gosh.
crossed.
Well, all the best.
Oh, get them.
And again, thanks for staying and giving us all the great details. We look forward to the next report.
Thank you so much.
You all,
Take
Ms.
care.
Buckley. You bet. Ms. Hanson, Ms. Betty. Go, go, go. Good luck. Bye.
Thank you.
No, no worries. No worries. Do we want to go back and do staff reports at this point that we cut short? I don't. We are done with the handbook. Okay.
Thank
So
you.
let's go back. I don't remember the item number at the top of my head, but this morning the staff reports is probably 4 or 5, somewhere in there.
Yes. Staff
5.
reports,
All right, it was 5. Okay.
Sure.
Is it me, Cheryl, or did you have?
Sure. Why don't you go ahead and start?
Okay, and I know Kara Mendoza is watching from her office, but she also has something to add, so she'll probably be running down here momentarily. So
Okay, and just want to say to committee members, usually we take a brief break around this time, but I think we're nearing the end of the session for the day, or do we have a lot more time?
We have handbook items we need to
We-
go through.
Okay,
we don't have a lot left if you wanted to take a break. I
Yeah, if
think.
you want to
let's do that. If we
Okay,
can do that,
sure.
okay. So why don't we come back at 2:40?
Okay,
Over here, everybody?
sounds good.
Okay, we'll come back at 2:40.
Good idea. Get up, stretch.
I'm going to invite all committee members have a seat. We'll get restarted. We'll reconvene. I'll reconvene the meeting. So everybody please take your seats and we'll continue. Michelle, I think I need the gavel. Can we all come back, please? Or a snare drum or something. Let's go. Right? Or a cowbell. We need more cowbell. Yeah, right? Oh, I've got plenty of apps. All right, so we're going to go back to some unfinished business from this morning. We're going to go back to item number 5, which is staff reports. And Erin Sullivan, the floor is yours.
I'm happy to. So good afternoon, committee members. We're just kind of picking up on staff reports where we left off. Try not to take up too much of your time, and just want to thank all of the folks today who have thanked staff. You've seen several of us today over the course of the day. There's a lot more. Well, there's a few more of us, but really appreciate that. And as I give you some updates, you'll understand why our staff is so important to us. Not that you don't already. So we are right now in the process of finalizing the site visits for this 21-22 academic year. They went a little bit further into May than we normally would, and we won't do that again. It's been a little problematic, and I will take full credit for thinking, well, let's just extend, if we just extended the shoulders on either end a little bit more, staff wouldn't be stretched so thin. Well, it's difficult for institutions and reviewers to be doing site visits this far into the year. So we will not be doing that again, but we have a few more coming up next week. One of them is mine, a couple other consultants, and then we'll be done. We'll be done for the year with Violet. We are wrapping up common standards review sessions for Indigo. There's 35 institutions in Violet, 33 in Indigo. So wrapping up common standards for those folks. They did program review in the fall. They will have site visits next year. So we're looking at that. Teams have been assigned. We've been rolling on next year's site visits already. Emails went out earlier this week to all of the 32 institutions in the blue cohort. They will have their site visits in 23-24. And we asked them to pick their site visit dates now, so that as we coordinate program review, we are asking reviewers, are you potentially available for these site visits as well as these review dates? So we already start to look at putting teams together a couple of years out. So blue cohort site visit survey is out. They have their program review due in October. And I say that in case there's friends watching from the blue cohort. Program review is due in October 15th. And we do send some reminders out in the PSCE news and through the blue cohort email list as well. I believe that's all, Cheryl, unless you can think of anything else right now. So just an update on where we are operationally with accreditation.
Great. And then Kara was going to report on a couple of the progress of some grants.
Good afternoon, everyone. So good to see you all in person. I'm happy to give an update on all of our grant opportunities here at the Commission, provided, of course, by state funding and authorizing legislation. So all RFAs at this point have been released except for teacher residency implementation. We anticipate later this month we'll be able to release that particular grant opportunity RFA and have a due date in late August, early September. We're going to give our LEAs a moment in time to think, have a little summer break, and then talk to their IET partners about the potential of a teacher residency implementation RFA response. So we're looking forward to that. I apologize for not being in the room today. I was upstairs reading expansion grants for teacher residency because on Monday we will announce who the grantees are for that particular grant opportunity. That was a quick turnaround. Our LEA stepped up. We had some applicants, and you'll hear more on Monday. Also on Monday, the FAQs for Classified School Employee Teacher Credentialing Program will be posted. So we're rocking and rolling in the grants world. The RFA for the Computer Science Supplementary Authorization Incentive Grant was released on March 23rd, and applications for that are due on March 20th. I'm sorry, May 20th. Go back in time. The RFA for dyslexia grants for preparation programs was released on April 29th, and the application for this grant opportunity for educator preparation programs, finally one for our educator preparation programs, this one is due on June 17th. We'll see what new grant opportunities come in the Governor's May revise, which we think will be released next week. And I'm happy to announce, but I'm not going to announce, we are in the process of hiring 2 new grants consultants. Thank you. Yes, give us a round of applause. And we're hoping there might be more positions in the Governor's May revise. So we're very happy for the opportunities and to be able to support our LEAs and our IETs in the field. So that's it from me.
And just, Cheryl, can I jump back in again? Sure. I'm sorry, absolutely. I forgot a couple of things as Kara was talking. Just one of those. So all of the grants work that Kara was talking about has been accomplished to date by Kara and Christina Najarro. Yeah. So getting 2 additional grants consultants at the moment brings our grants staff up to 4. And still they are outnumbered by the number of grants we're administering. And there's at least 3 more in the works right now in legislation. So really happy to be bringing some people on board and looking forward to maybe bringing some more on board.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And not to mention, we did borrow
Mhm.
3 of the accreditation grants consultants to step up and help out. So
Yes.
we're so thankful for everyone jumping in and being part of the process. So thanks.
Yeah.
The thing that I wanted to add on, because this is an important announcement, and we let our consultants know just yesterday, but again, for all of our IHEs that are watching, and of course for the committee, we had to make the decision to keep site visits in the fall virtual. We are, however, planning to go back to in-person visits starting in 2023, barring any unforeseen worldwide pandemics or other things that we simply can't predict. But in listening to institutions, in listening to some feedback from some of our staff, in making note that certain conferences and other groups that we work with in the education field are maintaining virtual presences in the fall, we just decided to go ahead and stay virtual for the fall for now. I mean, there still are random surges in COVID and new variants, and it's just very, very difficult to lose team members when things pop up. So right now, virtual still for next fall. Yes, committee member.
So is there going to be a limit moving into the future in terms of like how many Zoom sessions a visit could consist of? I'm just kind of curious, like, is there anything we're taking out of this learning opportunity that actually we could use to our benefit?
Yes, there absolutely is. I think that in the past, one of the difficulties that in-person site visits have had sometimes is getting employers, administrators, current candidates who are maybe in student teaching to come into the institution for site visits, whether it's an LEA or an IHE. There are those certainly that serve areas that are really vast around their institution, and especially in areas like the Bay Area and Southern California, where 5 miles can take you 30 minutes or more. It's difficult, you know. So I think that one of the things that we've seen is it is possible to do virtual interview sessions. And even at an in-person visit, you could put one of our reviewers in a room with a screen. You could zoom in the candidates on the screen, and the interviewer there in the room could interview those folks remotely. Now, doing it a hybrid of some in-person, some remote, I don't love. I know that you all in the field have been doing that for the last couple of years, right? Roomy, Zoomy, or whatever it's called. But there sometimes is a sense that somebody gets missed, either the people online or the people in person. But I don't think there's any reason why we can't be doing some virtual interview sessions at in-person visits. If it gets people there and it gets their voices heard, then let's do it.
Yeah, I think one of the things we're going to do once we have, I think, a couple more visits, next week? Trying to remember. And we always have like a debriefing session with our consultants and just think about what have we learned from the last 2 years, and what moving forward, you know, what can things look like? Because we don't necessarily have to do it the same way we've always done it. So, you know, taking the best of whatever we've learned in the last couple of years, and, you know, the best of in-person visits as well, and then rethinking the 2023 on visits for sure. And then of course, asking our institutions, you know, what they think. I think that'll be really important. But I wanted to mention a couple of things before we go. And David, please jump in if there's something that I'm missing or if you have more to add. But we kind of accidentally got onto the SB 488 conversation. So that was the reading and literacy piece. And so we kind of covered that. But I just wanted to reiterate that was on my topic to talk to you all about, that bill requires us to put together a panel of experts in the field. And so that group will be meeting starting next week. It's on a fast track. We have to adopt new standards supposedly by September 1st. We're not sure if we're going to make that, but because you know where people are during the summer, it's really hard to get feedback from people during the summer. So we're doing our best at least to do as much as we can during the summer. But that will require eventually that we have a certification process for all programs. before we institute a performance assessment for literacy and reading. So more to come on that. David, do you want to say anything more on that one?
The one thing I'd say is that when that bill went through, I think the thing that most people paid attention to or noticed was that we were going to be replacing the RICO with a performance assessment, and the rest of it kind of slid through. But the language in the bill is very prescriptive with tight deadlines. So one of the things that we're trying to do is there are 2 deadlines for when we need to change standards and TPEs, and we want to get them all done this year so that programs have 2 years to implement before we would do the certification, and then it'll be 3 years before the performance assessment.
Right. Rather than stagger the changes, we'll just try to get it all done at one time so everybody knows ahead of time what's going to be expected. So that's important work and fast work that's happening. The ed specialist transition seems like it has been years, because it has been years. So the regulations are over in OAL, Office of Administrative Law, right now. We are expecting feedback from them or approval within 30 days, and I think it's 30 calendar days. So we're talking about sometime mid-June, I think. Once we get that approval, the new credentials may begin operating starting July 1. That's the date that we've been moving forward with. And so we're really excited to hear back from the Office of Administrative Law, and our team has been working really hard on those regulations. The other big piece of work that I think I mentioned before was that, I'm sorry.
I just had a question about that as a program sponsor.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the regulations for the TPA?
The regulations for the standards that include the TPA, yes.
Okay, because otherwise all the rest of everything else is the same, because like we just finished our transition.
Yes, no, we're moving forward. Sarah can add to this, but yes, no, we are putting the standards in regulation as we are with all of our standards. But the difference here is that there are new authorizations. You know, the standards were reconceptual, or the credentials were restructured. And so in order for those restructuring to those new credentials to sort of be official, they need to be in regulations. And so we've been trying to time it. The timing's difficult, but I understand the TPA work. Do you guys want to report on that work? The standard setting is coming later.
It's coming in June, and so that'll be at the June commission meeting.
Is it?
Is the stand?
Okay.
Yeah. So right.
Okay. Yeah.
The
So
performance assessment staff is working on that. So.
Right. Does that answer your question, Sharon? No, we're not. Everything should be fine. And if anything happens with OAL, we'll probably be able to answer their questions or whatever, and we'll be fine. We've been working with them closely all the way along. So we've been answering their questions as they've come. So, but then there's an official period of time that they get to review and give us the feedback. So, and we're in that section right now. The other thing I was going to mention is the new Pk3 credential that is being created, and there will be an agenda item at the June meeting that really begins, or shouldn't begin, really sets forth the requirements, the TPEs, the standards, and the authorization statement for that. The regulations, I believe, will be in August. We were trying to do it all at once, but it's a little daunting to do everything at once. And if the commission makes any changes, then we have to change the regs. So that credential will have bridges from various points. So if somebody's holding a child development permit, how do they get this new credential? If somebody is a multiple subject credential, how might they add this credential or get this credential as well? So it's very complex. A lot of work going into that. David, I'm going to turn to you and see if you want to say anything more about that one. And the David must be answering another question. The Pk3, do you have anything to add on that one?
That one is coming before the commission again in June, as you said. There is one more survey out right now regarding the requirements for the credential. We've gotten a lot of feedback, so we are narrowing in on requirements and standards that everyone can get behind.
Yeah, this one's been exceptionally challenging because you have the preschool, early childhood perspective, and then you have the K-12 perspective. So it's been interesting to try to merge those worlds.
And there have been some groups that have asked us to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
However, kids are going to start showing up in transitional kindergarten this fall.
Mm-hmm.
And the projections are that we're going to need anywhere between 9,000 and 16,000 new transitional kindergarten teachers over the next 4 years. So
yeah,
it's hard to wait.
Right. And so the thinking is try to tap into those preschool worlds and see if any of those folks want to become teachers in this new environment. So it's a task. And then just wanted to mention that we continue to work on the challenges that COVID put on all of us in terms of clarifying flexibilities or thinking through how do we serve those candidates that are out there right now and still need RECA and TPA, providing the support to induction programs that to continue to allow them to finish those requirements while they do their induction programs. So those continue, and I think they'll be with us for a little bit more, as you all know. And just trying to go through the murkiness of it all. This candidate had this set of circumstances, and where does that fit in all of this? So those are the big challenges, I think, for us right now. David, anything else?
There were some positive things both in the governor's January 10 budget and legislation to help support getting more teachers into our prep programs and then into our classrooms. So we are eagerly looking forward to the May revise coming out, and fingers crossed. But I don't want to get any hopes up.
Speaking of hopes getting up, I'm sorry, we keep adding on and adding on. There is a bill for our K-12 friends here might be interested in this. There is a bill moving through, and I apologize that I don't know the number of it right now, that is recommending some funding for induction programs, specifically for training of mentors and things like that, so that induction programs can get some resources to support these candidates that they have now in their programs that need TPA and RECA supports. The induction community has been pretty amazing about accepting all of these candidates with no squawking at all when those flexibilities were put in place, but came to us kind of weary-faced a little bit in December and said, when we said, how can we help? And they said, we could really use some resources. So there is a bill moving through right now. And the last time I looked at that bill, and I'm happy to get somebody a number when I have a chance, I don't want to waste your time looking it up right now. The last time I looked at that bill, there was no one had signed on for support just yet. The commission has not been able to take a position on that bill because of timing, but I just think it's something that K-12 communities might be interested in registering their support for as it moves.
Exactly. And that's it, I think, for now.
Can I just something Erin said and also following up on what you said, Cheryl, earlier, made me think of this issue that's been jumping around in my brain, which is these sort of kind of free agent teachers who are potentially not offered contracts, like in my district. I mean, of course, that's my number one referent, but there's a lot of kids, even though we start school in July, we hired a lot of new teachers as late as October. And several of these teachers who were residents in our residency program were offered, not permanent positions. They were given jobs as long-term subs. Some of those people might need these flexibilities, so they're like double plus vulnerable, right? And I would think, if they're residents, well, our district has an obligation to provide that to them, yet they've still kind of like slipped through the cracks, even though they're on the radar and the same person's responsible for both. So I don't know if there's any way to like influence how that money goes out, but wow, what a great way to target exactly those teachers that we need. I mean, it's happening to people in STEM subject areas. We cannot afford to lose these people. I mean, right. Like 3 of the people I'm thinking about one of them's got a math computer science degree, temporary contract, hired at the end of October, doesn't have an induction mentor because we had an enrollment window, right? Okay, just to make it even more amazing. I mean, then there's, science guys who have credentials in chemistry, biology, and physics. And just because of their tenure in the district, they're kind of like ping pong balls. And it's alarming. We've got to do something because we can't. I mean, it's one thing to say we have a teacher shortage, we got to grow these people, paraprofessionals and all that. But then it's another thing to take San Diego State, like bio major, and like lose them. Like, you can't do that.
Exactly.
So I don't know.
Use your microphone.
I mean, it seems like, helpful to give money to induction. They certainly need it, but that's not going to capture a lot of these.
Everybody.
In fact, we've heard today.
Right.
I was going to say, as somebody who's lived the last 9 years in HR world of public education, as a county and as a superintendent for a large district, I didn't let those people go. I made sure they were taken care of. So really, that's in the world of California education, that's short-sighted district management if you're not taking care of those really hard to fill positions. So I mean, it goes beyond. I mean, I think more money for induction is a wonderful thing because I really truly believe that mentoring beyond those 2 years of induction are even going to be more beneficial in retention of educators in our state. But those, give me their numbers. I will find them jobs. It's a little more expensive, and well, actually not much more in San Diego County. So you get them
you got it, and they're we're losing them.
One of the things we've had a lot of discussions about internally is stopping the bleed, at least, and looking at the data of preliminary candidates or candidates in preliminary programs and making sure institutions are only granting those preliminary credentials now, because our testing centers are open and they should be doing their TPA in their preliminary program. So we've been running data reports, and our program assessment, our performance assessment team is like contacting each institution individually saying, hey, look at the numbers. What are you doing? Or, are these legitimate folks that haven't been able to take because those testing centers are closed? And really talking individually with institutions to figure out what's going on. To just, at some point we need to move beyond this. So.
Thank you. If you aren't already aware, I encourage you to enroll in PSD News, which comes out every Friday. Yeah, it's seriously, it's really interesting. And if nothing else, if I don't have time, I would just move it into my PSD News folder in my email.
And over in the corner are those two that are responsible for it every week, Cheyenne Jones and Michelle Bernardo.
Oh, those are great. Those are great. Professional Services Division tells you everything of what's going on within the division here, and so you learn a little bit about the grants, about everything else that's going on. Get often hyperlinks to more information, but it's just great. It's a great way of staying in touch and seeing what's going on. If nothing else, share it with your colleagues. Tell them to get involved in that. Just one more pat on the back to the staff, and then I'll be done. We are all part of the same process. We're here because we're committed to what the work is for supporting teachers. I mean, that goes without saying. I remember as a beginning teacher, and maybe your feelings are different than mine, but to me, the CTC was just a hoop to get through to get my credential, right? I did whatever I had to do just to get the credential. Is being on the other side after all these years and just seeing the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes in support of the teacher education programs and the individuals throughout the state is really phenomenal. And I always walk away from these meetings with just more and more information than I ever thought possible that I would know. So to anybody who is still listening to the meeting, I would just encourage you to just find out what's available, because there's so much work that goes on in support of what we are all interested in doing in California. So I just can't commend the work of all those involved with the commission here for all the efforts that they do. Right, that's it. That's the last pat on the back. You're gonna get this. That's it. You're done. We're done. But no, absolutely. Okay, so we need to move on to item 22, right? 22 is it? Do we have time for that?
Aaron was just suggesting we might do 23 next. Okay. Is that what you were suggesting?
Yeah, because we have the good fortune to have Sarah Solari with us here today, and she's part of the item 23 team. Okay. Item 22 is mine, and I'll be here tomorrow, so you can hear from me anytime.
Well, she's in the engraved Sarah Solari column.
This is my seat now, right?
Absolutely. Okay, so we're looking at item 23, which is discussion of accreditation handbook chapters. And Administrator Cheryl Hickey will introduce the item.
Actually, I've asked
Yeah.
staff to do it. So Sarah and Jake and Poonam were instrumental in these revisions.
So
Yeah.
Administrator Cheryl Hickey will pass the buck to other. No, all right.
But she knows just as much. This is
Oh, I
absolutely
know,
was a
just kidding.
team. This
It's
was a
late, I'm
team
just being
effort.
goofy.
Absolutely, I know. This was an absolute team effort between Aaron and Cheryl and Jake and Panam, who you have on your screen there. And as you know, you started working on this item back in 2019, and then of course we had COVID, but then you revisited it again in February and again in March, and so you've looked at chapters 1 through 4 and chapter 9. What we're bringing to you today, just for your discussion, is chapters 10, 11, and 12. And chapter 10 has to do with the site visit team member information. 11 is the Board of Institutional Reviewers, the skills and competencies related to the BIR member. And then 12 is the team lead. Some things to think about as you're going through you're having the discussion about these chapters are that one, we tried to update the chapters to reflect the current situation that we have virtual site visits, and moving forward we may have hybrid site visits, right? There may be some that occur virtually, there may be some that occur in person, maybe some both. So we're trying to update the handbook to reflect that. And as Cheryl mentioned, things are going into regulations now, and this handbook may well be one of those items that goes into regulations. And so when things get put into regulations, you want to keep it as brief as possible. So because everything that goes into a regulation has to have an explanation behind it for the Office of Administrative Law. So what you see, this nice colorful document on your screen, is the result of lots of just suggestions from staff, all staff members who are present here today, both virtually and in the room. And again, it's for your discussion. And so we've kind of divided it in this way. Jake is going to take chapter 10 to kind of walk you through the highlights of chapter 10. Panam will do chapter 11 and I'll do chapter 12. We certainly don't own these chapters. We're each going to kind of pitch in if we think that the other one has maybe forgotten something that we think is important. And so it's truly a team effort. And of course, Cheryl and Aaron will do the same thing. They'll be like, oh, we want to say this as well. So with that, I know Jake's on the screen, and Jake, I'll let you have at chapter 10.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. That was a great introduction, and it's nice to see everyone again, this time from the virtual world. I'll just be pretty quick. You're looking already at a lot of edits for chapter 10, but the main edits are focused on the following areas. So updates to reflect new processes for training site visit team members, updates from where we were years ago. An update that mentions the ability of the team to include preconditions issues in the team report if something should arise during the visit. Updates for new technologies, the new data dashboards, and expectations around virtual visits, as Sarah said. Also, there's some updates for new terminologies, starting to get some of the terms that were used years ago and move to things that are more appropriate new terms now. Some basic grammar fixes or simplifying of language that may have been unnecessarily complex in the first version of the handbook. Also, some edits to remove complexities of the travel booking process. So, as Sarah said, it doesn't necessarily need to be in regulation. That's more of sort of internal work that we can have with staff. Removal of some of the overly prescriptive instructions on what team members must do in preparing for the visit, or what questions they must ask during interviews. So a little more acknowledging of their expertise in being able to ask questions that fit with what they're looking for. The last area I'll say is in chapter 10 is taking out some specifics around coordinating with CAPE as the national accreditor, since there are now 2 national accreditors that we know are
going to be working with California institutions. And and that those specific processes are still being worked out and are more coordinated throughout the year of planning. So I'll stop there for chapter 10 and turn it over to Poonam for chapter 11.
Did we want to
Before you
stop in between?
Before you
begin?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to suggest you put
Mhm.
on and have the discussion on chapter 10 first. Awesome suggestion, Poonam.
All right, anybody have any comments or thoughts, questions? Member Taylor.
Do we need to address somewhere, and it spells out the roles of different people during the site visit very nicely. Do we need to address contingencies and planning around what happens if the team lead gets sick and can't make it to the site visit? How does that change the roles of the site visit? What's the impact of that? To ensure that the program sponsor is getting, a thorough look, and that they're not getting short shrift because the team is down a key member, because the responsibilities that are beautifully articulated are substantial, and it could be a big impact.
Thank you. Any other committee member? Thoughts, comments? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Member
Well,
Chakowski.
I would appreciate the suggestion here, because clearly the visit is a really important part of this whole process. And, you can do all the preparation, but if the people who come and visit aren't playing with all the cards because they didn't realize that that was supposed to be them, then you have a very different, somewhat frustrating experience during a site visit. It can be just a little deflating.
Anyone else?
I keep
Erin?
I keep starting to jump in and wondering if I should just leave it alone. I think that I like the idea of putting some language in there, because one of the things the handbook is used for, we balanced out between how much do we put in here because we train and calibrate these folks, and they get a lot of this in their training. And my argument was the handbook sometimes is grabbed, a chapter is grabbed by us to help a team member refresh, or it's grabbed by a team member on their own to sort of refresh, maybe if they've been out for a couple of years, or sometimes an institution will look at it and like, okay, what can I expect from these folks? So I appreciate maybe if we could find something generic to put in there about instances when a team member can't be there, and an assurance on our part that we will always try to replace that person. I mean, team lead is almost a worst case scenario. Almost, I mean, losing any team member at the last minute is difficult. And with a team lead, we don't have as deep a bench, so we would definitely be looking for somebody to step in that has extensive team lead experience, who could smoothly step in and take over that role. But yeah, putting something a little more generic in there to provide some assurances to folks who might pick up this handbook and be looking for something.
Or there could be conditions when you have to reschedule. Like if there are certain people who can't be there, you don't just forge ahead, right?
We try.
Do you?
We try to. I mean, you've seen today, institutions that sometimes that have a full year to prepare sometimes still have difficulties with their interview numbers. So asking the institution to reschedule.
No, I was thinking about from like, the visiting team side, like.
Well, but if we reschedule the team, we're rescheduling the whole site visit.
Right.
Right. So we try not. I can't think of a time when that's been done at the last minute, certainly, because it involves a lot of constituencies. So again, we do have a number of really well-trained BIR members that we can slip into various roles, and we always let them know, hey, this site visit's in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have time between now and then to really immerse yourself in all the work that's been done and all the feedback and all of that? And if they can't, they will say no. Yeah.
And I was just going to say, this year particularly, we have had a high number of reviewers we've had to swap out because something has come up, or fortunately not team leads, but a lot of team members. We have had to readjust work or have somebody else cover a certain set of programs or whatever. It's been a challenging year.
Any other comments or suggestions?
I was just trying to see if there was a spot. It was already included. It looks like I remember thinking there was something in there, but it was only referenced in terms of if there was a conflict with a team member, like a professional conflict or thing like that. So there is some mention about replacing, but maybe it would be good, to add the other reasons why that could happen and how it would be handled.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, let's move on to item 11. We don't always go back to, chapter 11. We always come back if we need to. So chapter 11, please.
Okay, so chapter 11, Board of Institutional Review Member Skills and Competencies. And just for the sake of this review, just know that I'm referring to the PDF version of chapter 11 that's provided on the COA webpage for today's meeting. Just so when I refer to page numbers, we're all looking at the same thing at the same time. So if we look at that first page, one of the changes that I wanted to highlight is the additional language around how these consensus decisions that are made by the team are around an institution's alignment to commission adopted standards. And you'll see there on the right-hand side of your page, one of the deleted sentences was specific to who this chapter would be of interest to, because the reality is, kind of like how Aaron mentioned earlier, there are different audiences that could be looking at these chapters for information for whatever reason. So we want to be able to ensure that the information that is there is concise and yet understood to whoever it is that is looking at the information that's contained in these chapters. And then if we keep scrolling down at the bottom of that first page, you'll see the inclusion of the word evidence there in track changes. And then we'll actually keep going to page 3. So you'll see there at the top of page 3, there's a list of 5 items. And kind of like how Jake was saying for chapter 10, there was an emphasis on including the reality that preconditions are looked upon or looked at during the course of a site visit, and usually in reference to whether or not there is an issue that bubbles up to precondition level, but just making the notation of it there on that list. And you'll also see there is information included about how there is data from the annual data dashboard compiled from the ADS system that is one of the data sources that teams look at during the review. And then also that 5th line there, any additional information, because the reality is whatever information requests come up, institutions do their best to provide them to the site visit team so they have the most accurate information there for as they're conducting their review. So that's it for that page. Oh, and that 5th line is also added. There's a new row in that BIR members table. So again, just making sure that the information is consistent and clear and aligns with what it is that we're currently doing. Making our way to page 4, you'll see that section titled Review Documents Thoroughly. That whole section has been rewritten. And I do actually want to take a moment here. I mean, you look at the wording that's here, submit well-organized and easily navigable evidence. The staff does spend a fair amount of time, probably a little bit more time than we should, kind of providing a technical assistance to institutions as they work on organizing their accreditation websites. So honestly, the hope is in the next few years, probably that wouldn't be as much of a concern, as all institutions would have at some point gone through one of their accreditation activities so that they are familiar with the organization of a website and the fact that all your links need to be working. You have to double and triple check those links to ensure that reviewers have access to the information that they're looking for. So ultimately, the point that this paragraph is trying to make for the site visit team is that team members should consider the information that's there and get a sense of what evidence might still be missing rather than judging the institution or its evidence based on the way that it has been laid out. So we're going to keep scrolling to page 7. So again, keeping the point in mind that individuals that read these chapters could be those that are kind of refreshing their minds about BIR training, that are curious about BIR training or what goes into a site visit, could be a new coordinator at an institution that's going to have a site visit that's trying to wrap their minds around what their process looks like. If you look at the first section at the top of the page, there's additional notation on the types of questions that could be asked of different constituency groups. So it's kind of understood what exactly, or what the team is looking for. They're looking for the perspective of these different constituency groups when they interview them. And then the final kind of highlight I'll make for the track changes that you'll see in this chapter is on page 8. There is an entire section that's added titled Use Data to Help Focus and Formulate Some Interview Questions. So again, this is new due to the fact that site visit teams now can use information from their accreditation data dashboard, and that's information that's compiled from the annual data that's submitted in the annual data system or ADS system, or sorry, ADS. I always want to say ADS system, but the S is system. So the information that's compiled in the ADS, among the other sources of data that teams are looking at. So those are the main changes that we're highlighting for this chapter. So I'm just going to pause there to kind of take any questions or clarifications or suggestions that committee members may have.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Member Tchaikovsky.
Yeah, I love especially the changes on page 4 and page 8. Thank God you're not like grading people on the quality of their cursive, right? I mean, it's about what they're actually saying and what's there. And then to have data and some sort of evidence explicitly stated as an integral part of this process is much appreciated. So those are awesome. I love that.
Great, thank you. Anybody else wish to make a comment? Member Taylor.
I was explaining to one of my colleagues why I was going to be gone for 2.5, 3 days this week, and he said, "Oh, good. Can you find out for me why do they have visits starting on Sunday?"
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed in here that it says traditionally Sunday
Mm-hmm.
through Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
What's the thinking there? And is there? I seem to recall something about it's easier for district administrators to be available on Sunday, but now with the advent of Zoom and everybody's apparent ability to learn that quickly and get on board with that, could we,
Sure. So it's really and Aaron, you can jump in too, but it is availability. It's not just a site district administrators. It's when you think about the larger institutions who prepare candidates, teachers, and they go out to several different districts, right? And so you're trying to pull together different stakeholders, but you're also trying to pull in your completers, right? And so completers are teaching. And so you're interviewing candidates who can only really come after school. You're interviewing mentored teachers who can only come after school. And so there's a limited amount of time after school on Monday, when a majority of the interviews do take place on Sunday and Monday. You need all that information to start writing that report on Tuesday. And so you try to get as many people in to the interviews on Sunday and Monday. And typically on Sunday, the site administrators, you're right, now we have Zoom and we could get them in on Zoom. But typically you could get your completers and you can get your mentors or your master teachers, because your master teachers are those, they have their classrooms. They're the ones who, said, oh, yes, I'll take a student teacher. So there's just that finite amount of time Monday after school, and you only have one team member who's interviewing for multiple and single subject. And so that team member needs to be able to speak with the master teachers, the actual candidates, completers, and so there's several populations with one specific amount of time. But Aaron, you have.
Yeah, no, Sarah makes a good point. I will say that one of the things. Oh, sorry, Committee Member Forbes.
I was just going to say that we didn't used to have Sunday as part of the visits, but the visits were 5 days long. So they were, and as an institution, you're paying, or we're paying, right, helping to pay for the hotel rooms and so forth, for a much longer period of time. So one rationale I remember from when this changed was that it was less costly in terms of, actual time, but also it just didn't, take up as many days for the review team as well.
I was just going to make the comment that one of the things that one of the things that has been happening, I think, in the last couple of years is we're shifting to seeing a lot of the institutional leadership and faculty on Sundays because the institution has a little more leverage over the people that work for them than they do with their candidates and completers sometimes. So while Sarah is saying Sunday can be a really good time to see candidates and completers if they're available, it can also be the flip side where you can see a lot of the institutional staff and leadership, et cetera, so that on Monday and Tuesday, you can focus on seeing some of the people in the field. But we are starting to see our interviews run later in the afternoon now because candidates and completers and mentor teachers and some of these folks are saying, I don't want to come on a Sunday and I'm working on Monday, so you can see me after school. So now we have reviewers who are sometimes interviewing until 6 o'clock at night, which is really difficult on the reviewers. And I'm not sure how to work with that, but it's been a little bit difficult.
And not to beat this dead horse, but but also reviewers have told us that I don't want to take another day off of work, and so I'm helping out on a Sunday. But the other thing is that we have been more flexible lately. So smaller institutions that maybe we can start on a Monday, if they request it, we're happy to do that. So if it works for another institution, maybe we don't need 4 days, maybe because they only have multiple single and that's it. They don't have any other programs. We could do it in 3 days. We'll start on a Monday. So we have been more flexible as we've been talking with them. And over the past couple of years, we have adjusted the schedule. So some have not started on Sunday. And certainly for districts, a lot of them we've started on Mondays. A lot of the induction programs we start on Mondays. So it's a changing, evolving thing.
It is. And we are really, like you said, districts typically start on Mondays. And just to give you an example, I did the San Francisco State visit, and their past program had a class Saturday class. And to capture those candidates, our team member went to the class zoomed the class on Saturday so that she could get the candidates, right? She could interview the candidates, and she had a mass amount of candidates. And so she interviewed on Saturday. The visit didn't technically start until Sunday, right? But she was able to do her interviews for the candidates on Saturday. So we're very flexible. We really want the institutions we want to hear from candidates. They're the consumer of the product, right? And so, we interviewed till 7:30 at night because that's the reality. You only have so much time after school. So.
Yeah, it's never easy to try to schedule everybody at the optimum time. So we recognize I'll try to do the best. But that was a great question to bring up, Kevin. So any other comments or questions? Katrina?
Just as I'm listening to this and having gone through this fairly recently, like this is a huge Herculean, ultra complex endeavor. Erin, it's like amazing your head is like still connected to your body. I mean, but seriously, in California, people, let's just think about this. Again, I mean, there's been a lot of comments about the staff here at CTC, but this goes beyond the staff. This goes to vision, okay? I mean, I don't have any reason to say what I'm about to say, but if there weren't people here who really fundamentally believed this was going to make things better for kids in California, this would not happen. Like, you got to be creative. You got to go above and beyond just business as usual. So, as a teacher in the state whose kids were in public schools here, like, thank you. Like, I don't know where else this type of peer review that's standards based, about to be regulation, like enshrined, happens. Does this happen in other states to this degree of fidelity? I mean, I don't know. I don't want to take more time on this issue, but I think it's important. I didn't know any of these things until I came here. Okay. And I've gone back and almost proselytized about this. I'm like, oh my God, the CTC. And like somebody said, the first time you go through this, you're like, oh my God, the CTC, right? We've got to like do these things to the authority figures, but it just makes me wonder to what degree there's an attempt to educate everybody about what you do. A lot of what you do is like what we do. I mean, what you do and what we hang out and get to see and look at is not really understood. I mean, I really think it might be good to have a little publicity or education about how this works. But then again, maybe everybody knows more about this than I did and it's not necessary. But sometimes
You all are our publicity. It's comments like that and you working with us and then going back to your colleagues and the people in the field and talking about it. Because we can't toot our own horn. We're a regulatory agency. That's boring. No one wants to hear us say we're great.
yeah, but it's so much more than that. I think there should be like a PSA. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes, I mean, I think sometimes keeping good things moving forward is a challenge that can't be neglected. Like, I don't know. I'm not trying to like, do voodoo, like conjuring bad spirits or something, but I don't know. We gotta be careful and make sure that good things don't fall into harm's way.
We'll put it for a PR team, I think, in the next budget, right? Can we see, but I totally get it. Yeah, great point. Yeah, there you go. Cheryl?
Well, there is a discourse out there about not accrediting professions, right? Especially right now. So it's very timely, this conversation to, really try to make an argument for the capacity building feature of accreditation, not just the check boxes and regulations, So like one of our staff members, she's been a credential analyst for 25 years. And so she's been through many iterations of the system, right? She commented to me afterwards, she said, oh my goodness, this was so different. She had really engaged in a conversation with the interviewers and they were tapping into her expertise. She could, articulate this to me that it was no longer just a checkbox that she used to fill in the past, that they came and like, okay, let's see your accreditation files. Okay, good. And so I think, a lot kind of harvesting some of these types of impressions from different people that are positioned differently within the system would be really helpful. Mm-hmm. Well, but I think it'll probably have, sorry, no one. I'm such a rule follower. But I think, it's going to have to be up to us, though, as not the CTC itself, probably to do that. So,
One of the, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, it was my chair when we came here to our presentation. My chair was like so impressed. Well, it happened to be on the day there was a denial of accreditation.
Oh.
Then it was our turn. Stipulation from us was removed. And he was fascinated. He's like, wow, these are really substantive discussions. And I think you should be on that. So I was like, okay, thanks. But I was really happy that he saw that potential.
And we are too.
Yeah, I think all of us in the institutions have to experience this at some level, but we really do need to be better and more intentional about getting the word out somehow.
Jason, do you want to chime in?
And not to just take it to 30,000 feet, but in honor of Michael, my colleague here that speaks policy and the impact on public education, I think we're really at a critical point when you have things like the teacher shortage, you have, the wealth gap that growing in our state and in the country, the degradation of the profession due to the politicalization of what's happening around our country. We're getting competing forces. I mean, I just wrote for Gay on her request, and because I believe in performance assessments, to combat, or not combat, maybe not be the word, but to support the performance assessments because they're under siege. Oftentimes people feel that they want to make things easier, but to me that degrades our profession as educators, and we can't. I still get angry when people say, well, I'll just be a teacher. Well, if it was that easy, right, we wouldn't be in a shortage. I mean, people are leaving. So I feel like there's this, part of the accreditation process is to hold a standard, and we need to start having conversations statewide about why this profession is important and really marketing it as a cornerstone piece of the successful state, and not just, an offshoot when things are bad, but a long-term PR plan for being teachers and teacher leaders in our state. So
wow.
Maybe Kara's listening. Grant grant wise.
Next time, let us
Can you hear?
know, and we'll pull Dr. Mary Sandy in here so she can hear. She would be very pleased to hear, as the executive director of this agency, the comments that you're making.
She's always welcome. We definitely love that. Yeah.
She can listen to the recording, right? Because everything we said is recorded.
Yeah. All right. So that.
One of the things I was going
Go
to
ahead.
suggest is in this year's annual report is to capture some of the comments that institutions make as they come here about how
I've been making
valuable
some
this
notes here.
process has been. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things I was thinking about adding into the annual report.
Yeah. Great point. Well, that was item 12. I'm sorry. It's chapter 12. We do have chapter 13. That was 11. We have chapter 12 to do then. Right? We did
Yes,
10, 11.
correct.
Now we have 12.
Chapter 12 is fast because chapter 12 is about the team lead. And maybe this might be a place to put the previous suggestion. This also could be a spot. There was a suggestion and that this chapter might want to be folded into chapter 11 because the team lead is part of the team, but I don't know that this body will want to lean that way because the team lead is such a critical part of the team. So what you'll see in this chapter is, again, more of a streamlining here, cleaning out of language that really is not necessary. This kind of just points to the essential pieces of the team lead and how they build their team, how they communicate with both the team members and the institution and what their responsibilities are, and then the decisions, how the team lead really works with the team to come to decisions on standards. And then the report writing, and then that final report to the team lead gives to the institution at the end of the site visit. So this chapter, again, I don't know if you want to collapse this chapter into chapter 11 or if you believe there's merit to leaving chapter 12 focused on the team lead. We do have a team lead training that Erin puts on for the team leads. So that's why you see much of this information was struck just because it is covered in the team lead training. So if you're wondering, gosh, this chapter was gutted, that's because, go ahead, Erin.
Yeah, there's also, in addition to the training, we've created like a team lead manual.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a separate document for them that gives them a lot of this information that they can have as kind of a guide by their side while they're doing the team leads.
Yeah, but as Erin mentioned before, she's right. This document, the whole document, is picked up by BIR members for a refresher. It is picked up by the institution being reviewed to understand what's happening and what the role of people are who are coming to their institutions. So we do need to look at it from that larger perspective. So, yes, Cheryl.
Well, having been a team lead and a substitute team lead at that, when somebody had to withdraw and I had to step in with very little time to prepare, I really think it should be left in the chapter because even though the handbook was also very useful, sometimes when you're, especially you don't have a lot of time to prepare, this is a very succinct, very succinct way of explaining some of the most important parts. In fact, there were some things added that I think are useful. The stuff in red was added, right? So,
Yeah, I agree. And I think good point, Cheryl. I think it also it helps it stand out and not get buried within so much information that we have in chapter 11, which is great information. I think given the level of responsibility, especially as we've seen from reports here today, I think would be essential, no matter how small the chapter is, but just to have it as a standalone, it really points to the fact that this is an additional, it's exceptional responsibility. Any other comments? All right. Again, thank you all for the work on the chapters. It's phenomenal work. It's the wordsmithing, but it all means something. Every word means something, and more refined it becomes, the more effective it is. And thank you all for reading it and your comments as well. So again, thank you. We can move on to item. Go ahead, Erin. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to ask if you you're willing to move on, go back to my item, I think
Yeah,
I can move through
22.
it pretty quickly. Yeah.
I think so, because here, tomorrow we want to be sure that the meeting is over by noon, if not a bit sooner, so you can make your flight. So I'd rather if we can just hang in there and finish the today. All right, thanks, Aaron. Floor is yours. 22, it's the discussion of commission adoption of stage 5 changes and proposed changes to chapter 3 of the Accreditation Handbook. Administrator Aaron Sullivan will introduce. Aaron, go ahead.
Yes.
It's yours.
So I will keep this very brief because it is something that you've already seen on a number of occasions. So you all met in August and in October, and then again in February, and had some discussions around some possible refinements to stage 5 of the IIA process that would allow you to be more integrated into that process, more assistance to the commission as their official accrediting body that they've appointed. So I took those modifications that were sort of approved by the COA to the commission, and they approved them without change. I want to thank Co-Chair Frelly for being there. Co-Chair Martinez was meant to be there, but as you heard earlier, Sac City Unified was on strike. There were some things going on. But the commission was happy to put some more of this authority back in the hands of its appointed accrediting body. So chapter 3 of the handbook, which you had previously seen and approved, needed to then be subsequently modified to
Seen, not approved.
Did I say approved? Sorry.
Yeah, no approved.
I keep trying to say you've approved these. We'll get to that in June. You had previously reviewed some modifications to chapter 3. I subsequently needed to modify the modifications to reflect this new process for stage 5 of IIA. So basically, this is just letting you know the commission did vote in approval of making these changes. And I have updated chapter 3. You will have a chance to approve all of the chapters, hopefully in June. So we're bringing them to you one at a time so you can have better absorb them. In case anybody is wondering, these modifications I think the first time you will have an opportunity to sort of consider this new role will be maybe next fall, probably not until your first meeting in 2023. We have a provisional site visit in the fall and another one in the spring. Staff does hope to come to you with some kind of a discussion so that before you see your first provisional site visit and perhaps have to start making this decision, is there something that we can create for you, kind of like the green sheet or something that will help you navigate these decisions the next time you see an institution after a provisional site visit.
And Aaron's work in presenting it was just phenomenal. I mean, and I mentioned this in an email separate, just her calm demeanor and her presence and ability to present the opinion or the thoughts of all of us, the collective body, all for the good of the cause. And I think it was presented in such a strong fashion that when it came to the discussion point, there are a lot of great questions raised by the commissioners, very pointed questions that I think were able to be answered, and with the material that was presented, plus as well as the answers given verbally. So this, I kind of almost view this as a very important, if not monumental, move from the commission. And it really is a reflection of all the work that we have all done here over the years, because it's illustrating their confidence and demonstrates that they recognize the work that we do, that we're all experts. You are all experts in your field, and you come prepared, and you do the reading, and you ask great questions. And I wouldn't doubt that some of them actually watch some of the meetings, and maybe something. I like to think that they do, and so they see the work at hand. And so because of all that, they're instilling great confidence in this body here for this newly adopted responsibilities. So thank you so much for the work here. And thanks, Aaron. Really appreciate it. It's great.
Very welcome.
Yep. All right. That concludes it for today. So we're going to take we're going to do the recess. Right after the recess, I just have a couple of short announcements about tomorrow. So we'll now recess the meeting until 8:30 tomorrow morning. So we'll see you there. Rest well.